Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Cancer Conquering Community's weekly meeting. We all come together every week to get information, great information from a bunch of amazing people that you see in front of you right now. My name's Danny Gehrig. Mark actually asked me to kind of host these meetings for him for a little while. Well, he takes a leave of absence. I survived non-muscle invasive bladder cancer in 2023, and in order to do that, I had to get extremely healthy. And when I did, I became no evidence detected for the last 2 years. Today we have Chip Littlejohn. I had a phone convo with Mr. Littlejohn. He is an amazing, just full of energy and spirit. I love this guy to death. Just being around him pumps you up and makes you want to like go to the gym. So Boyd will really like that. We can all go to the gym. We could run. Um, I will put, when I get a chance here, I'll put a link to his YouTube. And without further ado, take it away, Boyd.
Good morning. Thank you, everybody. Chip, wonderful to see you. I'll just give a quick update about myself. I'm a two-time survivor of acute myeloid leukemia. I met Mark online in 2022, and Mark asked me to help lead the meeting. I had the pleasure of meeting him and Dr. Gary at Disneyland. Well, not at Disneyland. I was at Disneyland in 2023 and went to their house. And so I helped co-moderate this meeting for a couple of years, and Mark, it felt like it was my time to step away in the fall of 2024. Mark asked if I could help, so I'm thrilled to do that. And without further ado, I want to take him in and introduce Chip. And Chip, we're going blind with this. Would you like an interaction, or do I just hand it over to you? What would you prefer, sir? This is your moment.
Oh, just hand it to me. I'm always ready to go, and you and I are just meeting each other right this minute. I do know quite a few of the people on the call, at least have listened or spoken with or spoken to, gotten to hear them speak. What a wonderful group it is, and gotten to be around Mark for the last couple of years and Dr. Gary and I see some people that I know from my other life are on with me, Robin West and Sherry Knowles, uh, Thomas Comiskey. These are people that I know from my work life. And
Wonderful. And
so,
if everybody could, sorry to interrupt, if everybody could
yeah,
please mute your mics.
okay.
Other than the speaker. Thank you.
Okay. So my name is Chip Littlejohn. That is a nickname. It's actually William Littlejohn. When I was born, apparently I was a cheerful baby, and the nurses said, "Oh, isn't he chipper?" And it has stuck my entire life. So whenever I go to the hospital, I say, "Please be careful what you call me." And so that's kind of how that all happened. I was born in 1950, Lincoln, Nebraska, raised in the middle of Nebraska, and now I live way out on the west end, almost to fall off into Wyoming. Um, uh, the reason I get to
Excuse
talk to you guys
excuse me, Chip.
today, yes.
I need to ask Danny a question. Danny, did you press record?
Wait 1 second.
Yeah,
Absolutely. It
it says on the
says
top. Yes, it
right at
is.
the top. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
recording and stop and
Oh,
pause.
okay. Okay,
We're
good.
good.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, I see why Mark asked, because sometimes we can see it on our screens as well, and I
Yeah,
don't see it
I'm
saying that.
still scared too. We'll see when you get the hard copy, Mark. We're really going to try. I think we're
Okay.
good.
Well, whatever we're going to talk about today, I think is sort of common knowledge between everybody. It's the adversary we're up against. What is the problem? Essentially, every day we're replacing ourselves. The DNA strands are read, the new cell is made, and if all of a sudden there is an error, and if it's a particular kind of an error that fools the immune system and then fools every part of it, then we've got trouble. And so the nature of that problem, I guess the nature of the protection, I think, is interesting to me. And every time there's a new copy, there are what's called tumor suppressing genes. And some of those are P21, P27, P51, P53. These are genes that double check and make sure that it's a safe copy, that it can be made more copies of it. The other thing that can protect us is the white blood cells. So the T cell, the NK cell, the macrophage. Those have tremendous power. I remember a Chinese herbologist showed me a little movie one time. This is years ago when I was first learning about medicinal mushroom. And it was a live video. And there was a bad cell sitting right next to a macrophage, which is the amoeba-looking white blood cell. And the macrophage was doing nothing about it. And then they lifted up the corner of the slide and put something on it. I believe it was a cutting enzyme, so a lysozyme. And instantly, the white blood cell, the macrophage, saw the problem, killed it, and ate it. Just instantly, just float around it. It looks like an amoeba eating something. And his comment was, our immune system has the capability of dealing with big problems in a short time if it can see them. So those cells that have gone bad, they're kind of like in the old Star Trek, and they're putting up force fields to hide it so that you can't see it. That's what they're trying to do. And they have to successfully hide from every component of the immune system, or they get caught and killed. That's why we're all able to live as long as we do. So if this goes wrong, then what's the nature of the problem? It's no longer trying to make your prostate, your bladder, your breast, your uterus, your ovary, your skin. All it wants to do is make copies of itself. And if you take a sample of it and grow it in a petri dish, it'll grow out to the edge and then just pile on top of itself until it grows right out of the dish, because all it wants to do is make copies. A healthy cell, it's built into it to respect a boundary. When it gets done growing your nose, it quits making cells. When it gets done making your prostate or your testicles or your breast or your uterus, your ovaries, your white blood cells, whatever it is, it stops because it respects boundaries. That then creates an organism, which we all are. In the world I play in, there's two different ways that I can speak to people. One of them is organism to organism. The other way that I can talk to people is business to business. And I find that large agencies like the IRS want to look at me as an accountant, and I'm trying to explain to them that I'm actually an organism, and my long-term plan is to die and leave them in the lurch. I think it's going to work. But in the meantime, we have some arguments. But then what's the problem with that? You can actually grow a gigantic tumor on the outside of your body and live with it. You'll see horrible images of people with things the size of basketballs if they're in a country where you can't get help, that are growing outside. But if it's inside, we look like we're solid, but we're not. We have areas where stuff has to happen. We have pumps and we have vessels and we have organs and we have all kinds of things that are in there that require space. And if you start pushing on them, they hurt horribly. If you don't believe that, try getting a kidney stone the size of a tip of a pencil lead, and how much it hurts to have something where it doesn't belong inside of your body, or something that can't move. And I remember asking God one time, I only had one of those in my life, and it put me on the floor in the emergency room. Actually, I bent over to tie my shoes, and it just dropped me, literally dropped me to the floor. My wife rushed me to the hospital, and I remember, you learn stuff. I try to learn each time I'm around you guys. Then I pick things up, and then I know I talk funny because I notice things. But the ER doc came walking in. I wasn't where he had left me. I had gone into the bathroom. I'm laying on the floor because the cold tile next to the commode feels better than anything I can generate otherwise. The misery went to my left testicle. That wasn't where the problem was, but And he said, well, I don't have to ask you how much you hurt. You know how when you're in the hospital and they come by and they always want to know 1 to 10, how much do you hurt? And I picked it up from him right then. He said, the scale is 1 through 10 and then puke. He said, you're laying on the floor puking, you're beyond category. So I'm guessing that probably I'm talking to people that have been through this kind of misery in their life a few times. And then you're grateful for people that step in to intervene in whatever way they do. The guy that I work with all the time, over 20 years, was trained at the Duke Comprehensive Cancer Research Facility. And he was working with 2 people that got Nobel Prizes. They were making chemotherapy drugs. Probably most everybody knows what Taxol is, if you've ever had chemo or been around it. Camptothecin, maybe not so much. Sadly, camptothecin, the biochemist's name is Rick Deitsch, Rikdeitsch. He was working primarily with her, and they thought they had the world by the tail because in lab animals, they could stop any tumor growing with camptothecin. Unfortunately, when they went to human trials, it turns out we have a protein, and I always like to point out, you know more than you think you know. The protein that we have is called circulating human albumin. Well, you know more about that than you think, because what's the white part of an egg? It's the albumin. So circulating human albumin, unfortunately, adheres to camptothecin, and now it plugs up the kidney. Now you need a nephrologist. The smallest part of a kidney is a nephron. That's why it's called a nephrologist. Smallest part of a lung is called an alveoli, and I've never heard of an alveoliologist. Funny how our language works. His job was, and by the way, Monroe Wall was the guy that was coming up with Taxol at the time. He also got a Nobel Prize. But I just told you the problem. The treatment hurt the host and the disease. Those treatments, which are the standard of care now, they hurt you to help you. Why do you have to have a doctor, a diagnosis, a prescription, a pharmacist, a medical device when you're receiving the standard of care? It's to protect us from the ill effects of the treatments. That's why that's all there. And, you know, I've been writing the planet for a long time. Like I said, I'm a 1950 model human. At one time, I was a compounding pharmacy tech. So I was the guy behind the wall making the things, primarily female hormones. And then I would deliver them. And when I would do that in the evenings, then the women who were using the products would complain to me, which I asked them to do, because the way you feel, your symptoms are more accurate than the blood test, especially there, because it's like walking up to a faucet and adjusting how warm or cold the water is. Get it just right for you. And you can do that through a conversation even more than you can through a blood test or a saliva test. Isn't that interesting? That's the compounding pharmacy world. But Rick's job, is a computer-assisted drug designer. That's his job. And they ask him, find ways so that these Nobel Prize-winning cancer drugs don't hurt you as much. What a crummy job, right? Kinda. So if you have that job and you're working all day, every day, trying to figure out a way to how to hurt people less to help them, because when you stop cell division, which is what every single one of those drugs does, radiation too, it stops cell division, it is indiscriminate. It's going to stop the good ones and the bad ones. Because of that, and I hope you notice as we go through the day that I like to play with the English language. And the standard of care, I began to realize, I'm not going to accept that as standard. That's desperate care. You wouldn't do it unless you were desperate. And so I think it's sensible. You don't throw it back in the faces of the people that provide it. You're grateful for it, but you hold it in reserve, especially if you're in a situation where everything appears to be gone. Maybe you've had a surgery, you've had some treatments, you appear to be okay. I mean, a lot of people that come here to this call, are okay, at least okay for now. And so you hold those things in reserve. If the suspicion is that there might be maybe a single cell or two that's escaped and it has the properties to hide from the immune system and it might start over again, it might set up shop someplace else and take another run at you. Wouldn't it be nice if there was some healthy way of stopping those cells from taking another run at you? And that's the kind of thinking. And so our biochemist, our hero biochemist in the story here, working all day, kind of like I see him out there digging a huge trench with a wooden handled shovel that's dull and rusty, trying to figure out how to hurt you less. But if you're doing that, if that's the job you got, your mind's going to wander. And you're going to start thinking, isn't there something we could do that was at least a wash, that we didn't hurt him to help him? And then one day you're digging away and all of a sudden the big idea hits you. What if we hooked a shovel to a Caterpillar tractor and invented a track hoe? Now we got something. So that idea, that big idea was, isn't there something we could do to help them? Couldn't we just simply restore their health, restore their immune system, restore their ability to win those fights every day? What would that look like? Wouldn't that be the big idea? And so essentially what allows me to be who I am and do what I do is that simple concept. What could we do so that people didn't get sick? What can we do to help them to help them? Help me, help you, Tom Cruise said, right? Help me, help you. And these things boil down to how can we take care of ourselves better? How can we regain control when it feels like control has been wrestled from our hands? And all of a sudden we're in a parade of doctors. And I see the Disneyland shirt that Boyd's wearing. I know every one of you have been through this. You've gone to the fancy institute in the big city. I remember pulling up to Anschutz Cancer Center in Aurora, Colorado, and the horizon is bristling with cranes at that time. They were putting up the Veterans Cancer Center, the Children's Cancer Center, the Women's Cancer Center, the Men's Cancer Center, the General Cancer Center. I mean, there was cranes every direction you looked, and all the streets were brand new. All the landscaping was beautiful. As you pulled in, people in nice outfits came out and greeted you and took your car and gave you something that would roll you into and I thought, oh my God, I've just pulled up to the dark Disneyland. That's what I call it, the dark Disneyland. And you go in and everybody's moving in slow motion. And not in touch with each other. What's the beauty of this gathering here? You guys figured it out. We got to be in touch with each other. We got to be able to talk to each other, figure out who's figuring out what. Somebody knows something somewhere, I promise you. There are people who have ideas, bigger, better ideas that gives us a chance. And so that's kind of how that all goes. So as he began to work, he got married, had kids, needed money. That sound familiar to anybody? It's kind of like real life. And all of a sudden, packed up and left Duke. Had to get a better job. And at that time, Rexall was a multi-billion-dollar retail drug chain. And they saw what was happening in the world in nutrition. There was all these companies coming along that were just sweeping it up and doing great. Things like Shaklee and Nikken and Melaleuca and Noni, or all kinds of crazy things, and they were network marketing companies. And Rexall thought, we got to get in there too. They're going to take our market. And so they created Rexall Sundown, Rexall Showcase, picked up Rick Deitch as a young biochemist and thought he could help their formulators to find things that were very, very useful to the humans. Within a year, he was their lead formulator. Now, billions of dollars worth of products that he's created later, I have the good fortune to be on his scientific advisory board. It's Rick and I and Dr. Stuart Lonke, who is a board certified pulmonologist in Los Angeles. I think you can find plenty of bad lungs in Los Angeles. So they write books together about this kind of thing. Things like toxic obesity and invisible killers, books like that. I remember I coach water skiers. You can see over my shoulder in the fall when the water goes out, the pelicans come from everywhere to sweep up the fish when the water starts dropping down. They line up like a football team and they drive the fish in front of them and pick them up. And a pelican can swallow a huge fish. I mean, 5 or 10 pound fish, if they can get it in, they can swallow it down. And they're so beautiful. Anyway, they come, and that's like right off my yard. I can mow right down to the edge of the lake. I'm 70. Well, I'll be 76 this summer. This will be my 67th year in a row water skiing. Started when I was 9 years old. I still coach water skiers. I can still barefoot. I can get through a slalom course. I love coaching and doing that kind of thing. Well, what do we want? We want high performance. We are, I bet you, I'm talking to you, aging athletes that don't want to give anything up, right? We don't want to give anything up. And so that's how we do. And we just keep on going. And we find ways to hot rod our bodies. In my case, it all started with special forces. I was in Lincoln studying in Air Force ROTC. I never know what story I'm going to tell, but apparently I got an hour and a half to talk to you guys, so I can tell you anything I want, I guess. This is a fun little story. What am I going to be? Well, I'm too tall to be a pilot. I won't fit in the planes, and my eyes aren't that great either. And so here we go. It's our junior year. It's 1970. In Lincoln, the Military and Naval Science Building has been occupied by the hippies, which are the guys that are thinking, okay, it's probably not a great idea to go to war. Probably isn't a great idea to go to war, in case you want to really get down to it. Those of us that were heading for the military, we were going to prepare to think about this. I was going to spend the next several years, about 8 years counting that, preparing to do something that nobody wants to do. Interesting job, right? I was going to do something that had to do with doing things that nobody wants to do, wipe out the rest of the humans. Now, all of us, I suspect, get to do what everybody hopes and wishes they can do. Step in and help other people. We get to do this now. And so this is just how I got my job in the Air Force. We come back, starting our junior year, we go in, we're all on the basketball court and all the offices are around, and they call us in, and there's a sergeant at the end of a long office sitting at a desk with a stack of manila folders with not much in them, because when they occupied the building, they actually burned our files. The other students burned our files in 1970. That was part of their protest. Kind of crazy, because in your uniform on campus, you were kind of the scourge of the earth, but you step off into the old people, and all of a sudden they all loved you. Interesting human dynamics, the perspective of what they had seen. It was the people from World War II and the Korean War that were off of the campus. It was the kids that, were maybe thinking twice. Maybe they were right. I don't know. But anyway, he opens up my folder, and he sees my major is POLSCI. He said, son, I see you've been studying political science. We have a place for you in the Air Force. I said, well, actually, Sergeant, I've been out at East Campus on the Ag College. That's poultry science. That's my major is poultry science. And he looked pretty lost. He looked pretty lost. The same look that Dr. Gary just made. And he kind of shook his head and looked down at his shoes and he just said, please wait outside. So thank God it was a long office, because as I reached for the doorknob after about 20 steps leaving his office, he hollered one of the best lines I ever heard in my whole life behind me. He said, don't worry, kid, we'll find something for you. Chickens used to fly. And so I thought that was great. I went out and everybody went in. I'm going to fly this, fly that, navigate this, navigate that. I'm going to go to missiles, whatever it was, security, logistics, supply, whatever they were going to do. And I'm standing out there by myself. Your life takes crazy turns, right? Your life can take, have anybody noticed it takes some crazy turns? Well, mine was about to take a crazy turn. I heard the phone ring in his office. Now he comes out and he's carrying one of those little sticky notes, little yellow sticky note. They were all yellow back then. Shaking his head again, looking at his shoes. I said, what's the matter, Sergeant? And he said, I got to find a triple volunteer. I said, okay, what's this person got to do? He said, well, got to go to air traffic control school. That didn't sound too bad. That doesn't sound too bad to anybody. That's not bad, right? What's the next thing you got to do? Well, you got to go to Army Airborne School. I said, well, what's that? He said, that's parachuting. I thought, well, that sounds kind of fun. I said, well, what's the third thing they got to do? He says, well, you go to Air Force Combat Control School. I said, exactly what is this guy when he gets done with all this? He said, you will lead one of the nation's commando teams. I said, okay, I'll do that. Now he got that terrible look on his face again. They're like, don't you understand you're going to die? So he literally said, don't you want to think about it? And, like maybe some of us do. I said, of course I do. I just did. That's what I'm going to do. And so that was kind of one of the moments in my life. Let's go back to Rick Deitch now. He is the formulator, the lead formulator for a huge multi-billion-dollar supplement company. In walk two guys from Croatia. They have an idea. They have a natural occurring stone, and they have a piece of research on dogs where they've ground this stone up, and this stone in nature fills itself with poison. They ground it up, made it into an IV, pumped it through the veins of dogs with tumors, and the tumors in the dogs, many of them began to improve. This is existing research from way back then in the 90s. And they said, what do you think of our product? And he said, well, it looks very interesting. Why don't you let me look at it for a couple of days and come back? So they left and they came back. And you guys, what I'm about to tell you, I believe, is one of the most important discoveries of humans in my lifetime, for sure. So what happened was they came back and he said, you guys, I love that research you showed me. I love the idea, but he said, you got major problems. Number one, you have absolutely no control of the particle size. That's why you're having to put it in ground up in an IV and pump it through needles into people's veins or into dogs' veins. I just came from a place where I had to do that, where I had to hurt people to help them, and you're pumping them full of poison because the poison's already in the product. So if you just stop and think one more time, you know how you think you get an idea, but if you stop and think one more time, oftentimes you can improve that idea drastically. He said, what if we made it small enough that you could take it orally? Now we need to get under 5 microns, and it would leave the gut, circulate systemically in the body fluids. Then we could go everywhere, not just a few places. And check this out. Now he's getting excited. If we cleaned it before we put it in there, we know that every single one of you, I'm looking at your faces here, you are walking, talking biochemical reactions, but you're not running clean. You are an environmental filter. You are filtering stuff out of your environment and it is stuck in you. We are dirty filters. So we're already full of poison. He said, we could gather up the poison that's already in you and we could weaponize that, and that would do what your dog study said. And he loved the idea, but these guys were the sales guys. They weren't the biochemist. They walked out disappointed that he didn't want their product as it was, but it haunted him. And he started working in his kitchen. His wife, Liz, tells stories about he'd have batches going here, batches going there, trying to figure out how to make it smaller, how to make it cleaner. I mean, how do you make water run uphill? Essentially, that's what he had to do. He had to make a cationic exchange run backwards, a little bit like how a water heater works, only there's more tricks to it. You use a real mild acid, some heat, some time, and you're able to relax the bonds a little bit so that it opens just a tiny bit and you get a chance to get a tiny bit of this out. It takes about 4 days and someplace between 30 and 40 steps to get it clean enough and small enough to use it in that way, to be taken orally and circulate systemically in your body fluids. Now it picks up the poison. Now it will never enter a healthy cell. This is where selectivity is what's missing from the other side. Remember, the problem with the drugs we were talking about is they kill the good and the bad both. There is no selectivity. Here, all of a sudden, we have ability to pick up bad metals and not take the healthy metals. I bet you most everybody on here knows the word chelation, correct? Chelate means claw out. Essentially, that's the base of the word, is to claw out, chelate. And so it's going to claw out metals. Unfortunately, it's going to go after things, usually it's EDTA that does it, and it's going to take out things that are a +2 charge. Unfortunately, that includes a lot of the biologically active metals. So now you just hurt the person to help them again with chelation. And the more you do it, the less of the bad and the more of the good you take each time. So you eventually, as he says, you know, the thing it's best at is taking lead out, but you can't even get the lead out because it becomes more efficient or less efficient every time you do it because there's less of the bad and more of the good. And you wind up just hurting the person more and more and more trying to help them. So the new word, the breakthrough, and every time that we bring something to the marketplace, and I am a marketer, but I'm speaking generically to you guys today because my object in here is to inform, not to sell things. New word, clathration, CLATHRATION. Gigantic breakthrough instead of chelation, clathration, CLATHRATION, clathrate. What's the distinction? The distinction is now we're able to attract, trap, transport, safely easily excrete through the kidneys and the urine. Easier for the kidneys, not more difficult. If somebody has kidney troubles, it makes it easier to reallocate the use of the kidney function that you do have. And suddenly it may be enough. You might be able to run on that old transplant that's taken a dive on you, and you can't qualify for another one because you have to qualify for the first one. You got to qualify for the second one again. And if you've got comorbid conditions, you're probably not going to get another kidney. Maybe you won't get the first one. You have to show that you have lifespan to be gained by receiving the organ. You have to show that, or you won't get it. Somebody else will go in front of you in the line. His own father-in-law was in that situation. He was starting to get bad numbers again on his first transplant. Never had to wind up getting the second one. it's made him efficient enough by employing this idea, basically a pre-filter that makes it easier for things to filter. Had my very first AI experience. I'm sort of a dinosaur. When Danny got a hold of me a little while ago, he sent me a Facebook link to get on the call today, and I hit the button and it started doing weird things and bringing. I recognized nothing about you guys, and I had to call him up, and I essentially told Danny, "You've got a dinosaur on the other end of the phone here. I don't understand what's Facebook."
Well, and I told you that you got really lucky. I used to be a computer technician, but for about 2 minutes we ran in circles freaking out about what was going on, but we eventually got it. So I'm
Maybe you
glad.
don't know anybody else that doesn't have Facebook uh, in your lives, but I don't have Facebook. I don't understand. I don't know what it is, but I'm fascinated with living things and what makes us more alive. The special forces thing caused me to try to hot rod my body. I figured I needed to be stronger, better than the best guy from the other country that was going to be on the same battlefield as I was, doing the same thing, wanting the same space. We were going to be competing for the land and the females. That's pretty bold, right? Blunt. Why do wars happen? Males compete for the land and the females. Might as well face it. What are you fighting for if you're a kid on a battlefield? This is tough stuff. The guy next to you and a chance to go home. You have no idea what's going on the global stage that the argument's about. You're fighting for the guy next to you and a chance to go home. We're taught in special forces good stuff to win the hearts and minds of the people, just like I'm doing with you guys today. I hope that I'm winning your hearts and minds. I hope I'm winning your attention to a cause. If it all breaks down, and in humans, it can break down. We're up against god-awful diseases. You know, this disease we're talking about on the call today, god-awful thing. And once again, bold and blunt, I've learned to talk shockingly. I remember one of the women that I worked with said, I felt like I was decomposing while I was still alive. I thought, wow. What happens when war breaks out? Then what do? I mean, you're the same kid off the farm, kid that understands how to raise chickens and eggs. I mean, that's where they got me. I remember walking in and all the special forces guys started saluting me and calling me sir. And I said, fellas, I'm fresh off the tractor. You don't got to salute me. And they said, yes, we do. That's the way it's set up. But if it all breaks down, you're the young officer on the battlefield who's likely to go. What's going to happen when it all breaks down? And I thought, I knew back then, essentially, you don't even know who you're killing. You kill everyone. And God sorts the good ones from the bad ones. Years and years later, it began to dawn on me. There's good ones and bad ones coming up from both sides. That'll make you think twice, right? There's good ones and bad ones coming up from both sides. How nuts are we as a species? Big brains and opposing thumbs will get you only so far. Then you got to negotiate. You got to be friendly. You got to have the intent to be kind to each other. So I'm hot rodding my body, and along comes this phone call. My wife's talking. She hands a fax over her shoulder to me. It's 2005. Rick has solved the problem. He's figured out how to do what we were talking about a little bit ago. Hands me the paper. I look at it. I see that dog study. I see what he's doing. And I think I literally, in the first 2 minutes, I hope I could provide you this moment today. I thought, oh my gosh, this might be the most important thing I've ever read. All of those things that I did before, the workouts, the positive thinking, the contemplating the nature of warfare, economics, sociology, physiology, nutrition, we are all walking, talking biochemical reactions, all those kind of thoughts. Those were all right things, but why didn't we get the results we wanted? Stumbling blocks. Biblically, do not place a stumbling block in front of someone, right? So one of the nastiest things you can do, you can create a fool, someone who's fooled. One of the worst things is to be a fool. We don't want to be a fool. We don't want to be fooled. You remove the stumbling blocks and all those other things that you guys know. You know, Dr. Gary, I've heard him speak. I heard him speak before and after. All those things we knew, they're not suddenly of less value. They're suddenly of their full value. I don't want to go in and start batting heads with everybody in the marketplace that's trying to do something good. I want to recognize what they're doing also. I figure, you know, everybody's an expert on something. This just happens to be what I'm an expert about. We're also ignorant about something else. There's a whole bunch of stuff I'm ignorant about, including Facebook. But when you remove the stumbling block, now the building blocks can get where they need to go and start making what they intended to make and have it work like it was supposed to work. Let's play with the word toxic for a minute. Is there a chance in the world that we are all unintentionally intoxicated? Let's go play in the brain for a minute. You guys give me this much time to talk. Who knows where my brain's going to go, but let's go into the brain for a second. When you hurt a brain, what happens? My daughter was run over by an escaped Brahma bullet the moment she was being introduced as the Fair Queen in 2010. The woman sitting next to her, or standing next to her in a black dress, 17 years old, became Miss Nebraska, already was, and at 17 years old became Miss America that year from my little town in Scottsbluff, Nebraska. Teresa Scanlon, my daughter Jessica Littlejohn. An escaped Brahma bull picked her out of the line of girls and hit her dead square and threw her about 2 gates down the arena. Instant concussion. Thought it killed her. I actually thought I just watched her get killed. Jumped the fence. It's funny how everybody responds. Everybody in the arena was jumping out. Everybody out of the arena was jumping in. Well, it just so happened that it was, you know, our non-fighters that were in the arena. It was the girls being recognized as the pageant winners. The cowboys, the rodeo clowns, the EMTs, they were outside. They all start jumping over the fence going in. I'm jumping the fence going in. Everybody else jumping the fence going out. Isn't that interesting? Are you a jump over the fence going in person or a jump over the fence going out person? You're probably a jump over the fence going in person if you're on this call, because you want to go meet the thing and help. You know, essentially that bull, he's supposed to go out, do something exciting, and then find a gate and go out, which he did. But she's just laying there. I follow the ambulance to the hospital. She starts asking the same questions over and over again. Her brother, who's a 350-pound coal mine boss in Wyoming, has incredible dexterity. He was co-salutatorian with the woman who became Miss America that year. Takes her contacts out because he has that kind of soft dexterity. Nobody else in the emergency room could get that much dexterity to get so much sand and dirt out of her eyes. And so he took over and did it. Gigantic monster of a man. I always say he's the kind of guy that can walk into a bar fight and everybody will quit in case he's on the other side. You look at him and you say, okay, I can't think of any place to hit him that would hurt him. But I began to learn about brains. And it's the exact same way when you start using any kind of a drug or getting unintentionally intoxicated by your environment. I'm telling you, you guys, every single one of us on this call today has this problem. Maybe we're not hurt as badly by it, but we are a filter that's partly plugged. We have this awful stuff in us, and it's impairing our function. We are unintentionally intoxicated. Maybe at one time in your life, you were also intentionally intoxicated, and you begin to give up some of your performance. And then all of a sudden, one day you think it through, you think twice and you get a different result. You start getting a different result. So what happens when a brain's hurt? Everybody has seen someone get drunk, right? What happens? Predictable. Exact same thing as when you get smacked by a Brahma bull, you're in a car wreck or lose oxygen for a while. Very first things off the top are what? Why do people drink? Because they feel 10-foot tall, bulletproof, better looking, and more outgoing. They have impaired their filters, right? You just dulled your mental filters. I'm talking about chemical filters, but you just dulled your mental filters. You're not as shy as you were. You're not as cautious as you were. You're more outgoing than you were. I always said what we were actually looking for is something for the women to think that we are more outgoing and better looking. But why? So why do we drink it? You see, the boys shouldn't have to. Anyways, then what happens? Fine motor skills start going away, predictably. Short-term memory starts going away, gradually. These get worse and worse and worse. Alcohol poisoning, worse and worse over time. You don't get over it each time. Think about this. What are the very last two things that the brain protects? Long-term memory. Isn't it interesting that we have random access memory and read-only memory? Well, the read-only memory is the long-term memory. The random access memory is the short-term memory. The short-term memory gets hurt quickly when you begin to get intoxicated or unintentionally intoxicated. This is the kind of thinking, my brain just runs in strange ways. And when I saw what was happening to her, that her short-term memory was gone, she kept asking, what happened? Did I win? Where is my crown? And we'd tell her, and she'd ask it again. What happened? Did I win? Where is my crown? Crazy stuff. Last two things, long-term memory, and the very last one, organ function. So why is it that when you go to the old timers clinic, you may have an absolutely perfect body, but even the personality is gone from inside? So just kind of taking a 30,000-foot view of the condition of humans is what we're doing. And it's a little bit different way of thinking, but it allows you to get better answers. If you essentially what we represent or what we're talking about here is the concept of what could we do to help someone to help someone. And so after all this time, how can we help you to help you? That's what we're accumulating. That's what we're seeking. That's what we want to represent. That's what I like to represent in my life. I do this all pretty much over the phone. Yes, I'm traveling around the country talking to people right now. But the ideas are so safe and so powerful. So safe and so powerful that anybody can do it. And you can't hurt yourself. So yeah,
Chip, can I just interject for 1 second?
You know, I can stop anytime. I think maybe that's
Thank you very
enough for
much.
now.
So, first of all, thank you for sharing. If anybody's ever played the game telephone, or one person hands it off to the next. So I was kind of asked Hosman to help moderate the meeting, but obviously you don't need to be moderated. But generally the structure of the meeting is an hour. If something else was communicated with you, I apologize. But is there, I guess, two specific things that you wanted to bring up? And I see today's meeting, Chip will be speaking about fighting cancer from a daily perspective, tips and tricks for pain, and different ways to help navigate every single day. So if you have a couple things you want to go with that, and then if anybody has any questions for Chip, we'd
So
ask you to
a
kind
couple
of
more
raise your
quick
hand.
examples. When we go to the white blood cells, we essentially irritate the macrophage by using things that are made by mushrooms. You irritate the macrophage, you get a non-specific immune response, and it's like pulling a fire drill, and it makes a better decision. In the case of misery, we actually have 300 monocled Asian cobras, and we milk them every 2 weeks. And from them, we take a naturally occurring substance. They have a neurologically active venom. And with that venom, we can even go into like deep visceral pain, pancreatic pain. It is human discomfort. It is a certified homeopathic drug, homeopathic because such a small amount makes such a big difference. It is by weight 600 times more powerful than morphine. And it's able to attract, and it's not harmful. No addiction, no overdose, works better over time, not worse. It's an adaptive response within the synapse. The receiving side of the synapse actually becomes a filter. Easy way to understand it real quickly. If you've ever looked in a microwave oven and seen something cooking and wondered why it didn't cook your eyeballs looking in the window,
Mm.
it's because there's a little screen. Next time, look, little metal screen. The visible light
So
comes
Chip,
through.
can I just interject for a second?
Yeah,
Are we talking about specific vitamins, nutritions, supplements?
these are
You'll have to forgive
specific.
me for being.
Yeah, there
I'm
are
just walking into
specific
this.
products. We do make products, and we do have a company. And I'm trying to be generic. And so if it seems like I'm speaking cryptically, it's because I didn't come here on a sales call. I came to hang out with you guys and give you an idea of
Listen,
how we think.
I'll presume the conversation. If you have something that has worked for you and you want to share, I think we're all cool with that.
Okay.
Can I get a nod from everybody? Right? Versus selling something. But
That's
we'll
totally
give you
cool
one
with
more. We'll
me.
give you 1 second, and then we'll hand it over to Dr. Cleary.
Just let me interject just for a second. We're to stop the
Sure,
recording. We're gonna have the Q&A after the recording is over. So
sure.
that would probably be better in this case. So let's just if you want to outro, then you guys, and then hand it to me, and then we'll shut off.
Yeah. I want to respect the venue, you guys, and I know I hear you guys speak, and I do represent a particular person and a particular company and an array of products that I believe are the best in the world, and a way of thinking, and a way of thinking that I'm suggesting to you guys can make a difference, and so that's essentially what I brought, and so those specifics, um, coming through that screen, the cooking wavelength is bigger than the holes in that metal screen. The visible light comes through. It's that kind of simple thing. We do the same thing biochemically. Rattlesnake's venom is cytotoxic. It'll dissolve your flesh. A cobra's venom is neurologically active, and it calms its prey so that it can swallow it without having to fight. We use that concept. And so we're actually able to calm the nervous system and take the perception of pain out while letting all the useful messages through. That kind of thinking, that's how we play. So I hope that, I know I wander, sorry about that, but
No, that's
there is
perfectly fine.
encouragement
And
involved.
again, seems like you're adding value today. I'm just kind of ignorant to being asked to help moderate today, which I guess we didn't
Well,
need.
you and I are
So
just meeting each other, and
yeah,
so are Danny and I. So we're out on a flyer, and I took a major flyer with you guys, but I hope it was fun.
No,
it
you
was
guys are
great. Thank
great.
you.
You're both very interesting. I think everything's going really well. So, Boyd, excellent job on the moderation. Chip, thank you so much
Fascinating.
for all that information, Chip. It's been, I'm going to check it out more. I know, and we'll talk after this about the website you're discussing, as I'd like to check out more about what information. Because once I was up to 320 at my biggest, I lost weight due to cancer. I did it all just as naturally as I possibly could. In the future, I want you to think about how those things might affect people that are going through immunotherapy, like I am. When you were discussing how it worked via chemotherapy and how terrible that is, my localized intravesical immunotherapy, maybe these particular things that if I took them, they would help my immunotherapy. So I'm interested, and I'll definitely be looking for more. So thank you everybody for coming to the CCC weekly meeting. Thank you, Chip. Thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much, Boyd, and everybody who contributes to this every week. It's a lot for a whole lot of people. So everybody have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.